Hi, it's Alaska Granny. I recently did a prepper pantry haul from Fred Meyer's here in Alaska, and I thought I would show you some of the ways that I store the food to last the longest. I have some dried foods that I'm going to be putting away. Most of them are to use in the next perhaps 5 years, and so these are the ways that I store them. Some of the foods can last longer depending on how well you store them, but not all foods can last for 30 years. Whenever you're packaging up your foods, clear a space so you have a clean area to work. If there's too much clutter, it's too confusing and things can get complicated. The first thing I have is a bag of Malto-meal scooters. They're like Cheerios. I have some gallon Mylar bags that I bought quite a while ago, and they're nice because they have a gusseted bottom, so it opens up so they can stand flat. So when you want to fill it up, you can open it and stand it on the counter. These are also nice because they have a zip top. If you're not going to be storing the food for 30 years, you don't actually need an oxygen absorber if you don't have them, so don't worry about it. Store your food the best that you can. I'm going to pour these Malto-meal scooters, which are like Cheerios, into the bag. And when you want to use an oxygen absorber, when you open them, you need to use them all right away. So I'm not going to put an oxygen absorber in it today. After I have several packages and I want to spend the time just doing the oxygen absorbers, because this has a zip top, I can get them out, open it up, drop them in, and then heat seal them along the edge if I need to. I have a hair flat iron that I bought at a thrift store a few years ago, and that's what I use to seal the bags. I heat it up and then you just press it along the edge and it melts the edge together, and that's how you seal it up. If you ever open your Mylar bag and you use some of it up, don't throw it away. Wherever the new top is, that's where you seal it off. If you cut it off here, then you just seal it below. So you just need to make sure that you can keep working your way down so that however much amount you want to use, you're still going to be able to use your bag. One tip I have for you, if you have Mylar bags, don't fold them, store them flat, because if you start folding them where there are creases, they can actually get tears and bends and weak spots, and you could end up with a pinhole and get a leak in your Mylar bag. You may have caused a leak in your Mylar bag before you've even used it. That was a great fit. You can see because the Mylar bag has the gusseted bottom, it's easy to just stand it up and pour in the contents. And now it's full. I can squeeze this together, squeeze out most of the air, and press along the Ziploc top. Then you can even squeeze it out a little more because there's still an opening, and seal it. And you can see nearly all of the air is already out of it. There's still a lot of air inside the cereal itself, so what you need to think about is, if you add an oxygen absorber, will it crush all your cereal, and is that okay? You can write on the bag or add a label. I like to add what's the ingredients and the year that I packaged it rather than the year it supposedly expires, because then I know for sure how long that food has been in my pantry. I have 2 bags of egg noodles, and I think they might both fit into the Mylar bag, so let's go ahead and see how many egg noodles will fit in the 1 gallon Mylar bag. If you want things to fit and they're loose, give them the tap, tap, tap. And you can see 2 packages of large egg noodles fit in 1 gallon Mylar bag. Now I can squeeze out most of the air. Zip it up And then there's still a little spot that I can try to press out any more air to get it as airtight as possible. You don't need to use an oxygen absorber with foods you're going to rotate within a few years. You can save it for the longest lasting food. But you can always go back and add an oxygen absorber later, seal it back up, then use the flat iron to seal the bag completely. I bought a few bags of split peas. They're so easy to make split pea soup in your crock pot, but I only ever use a half of a bag. And so I like to seal these away already ready to use. I store half of a bag into a pint-sized jar. It doesn't fill up the whole jar, but then I don't need to worry about trying to measure it again. How much should I have? How much water do I need? I know how much my family wants, and so I store it in a size that works for me. These are both pint-sized jars. One just has a wide mouth, one has a narrow. Either one is going to hold the same amount of split peas. No, it doesn't fill the jar all the way up, but it's portioned out to meet my needs and my cooking preferences. I also bought 2 boxes of raisins. I'm going to store them into a clean canning jar. Don't ever put an oxygen absorber with foods like raisins, dried fruits, because they're not dry enough. They're not as dry as rice, beans, oatmeal, pasta that have a very low moisture content and are suitable for oxygen absorbers. If you remove all of the oxygen out of foods that still have moisture in them, you risk botulism, which can poison your family. Botulism can only grow in a completely oxygen-free environment. So you need a little bit of oxygen around things like raisins, dried fruit, to make sure that they're going to stay safe. I took the raisins out of the box and I put the wrapped packet of raisins, fits great into the 16-ounce wide mouth pint jars. By keeping them in the wrapper, you make it easier to pull them out later. The wrapper gives an additional layer of protection, and then when you get to the bottom of the jar, they aren't going to be completely stuck to the glass. You can still pull out the wrapper and free the rest of the raisins from the container. Put on the lid and they're ready to go into the pantry and can last for several years. I was able to find barley that I haven't had in a long time, and after I got home I thought about all the different ways to use barley. It's a grain that can be used differently. It adds different flavors and textures to your food, so I went back and bought a few more boxes. When you're shopping for barley, look for pearled barley. It's quick cooking. It only takes 10 minutes. You can cook it alone and serve things over it. You can even prepare it all by itself and freeze some of it, and it's easy to microwave and use it again. So if you're looking for a different grain to have that's easy to prepare in your pantry, look for barley. I found mine on the very top shelf next to some risottos and some fancy rices. They don't have a lot of it, so it might be challenging to find it, and I asked several employees and they didn't even know what it was. And one guy very graciously helped me, and when we found it and I was explaining to him what it is, and he said, "That's pretty neat, maybe you should get a few of them." So I don't know if he was actually encouraging preppers or if he just has the entrepreneurial spirit. Because barley is a grain, put it in the freezer for a few days. Grains naturally have weevils, and the eggs might not be apparent, but they could still be in the grain. And so it's always a good idea to freeze your grains before you store them, just to make sure that everything is dead and nothing's going to hatch out while it's in storage. You can see barley is a grain. It almost looks like oatmeal. Barley is an important ingredient in beer. Maybe that's why it's hard to find. It didn't all quite fit. There's a little bit left in the box, so I can go ahead and finish the box in a soup, stew, or casserole that I might be going to make anytime soon. Though it might be obvious what's in your jar, you should still probably label it to at least make sure that you have the date that you stored this food away. It's important to store food properly so that it'll last as long as possible. Make sure that you're getting the foods that you need, you're setting extra aside in your pantry, and that you're working through your pantry using up those foods so that you're still making meals for your family no matter what the day brings. Food is still available, so stock up and then store it so that it'll last as long as possible. If you enjoyed my video, I hope you'll share it with someone else you think might like it. Please subscribe to the Alaska Granny channel.